Hey guy, this is Chris from Swatera Media. I was recently watching the first episode of Miss Marvel, and as I was watching them bike around Jersey City with those cool animations on the walls, I thought to myself, I know how to do at least half of that effect. I can get things to stick to all sorts of surfaces, but I'm not very good at 2D comic book animation. So instead, I grabbed some stock animation and decided to make this tutorial. Today we'll be making this. You might be thinking to yourself, I bet you use DaVinci Resolve Studio or Mocha or Nuke or Flame or something paid to do that. No. I used only the free features of Resolve and Fusion. If you're interested in knowing how, keep watching. And as always, subscribe if you want, but also feel free to comment below with any ideas I might have missed. For this particular video, I did end up using an element from an unnamed stock video site that is not sponsoring this video, but I've left a link in the description below to a list of old cartoons that have entered the public domain. I've also included a link to the base video clip you see here, which I'm pretty sure I got from Pexels. Let's hope so. So first of all, let's put on our VFX detective hats and figure out more than likely, their approach would have involved a 3D camera solve. They would have first made garbage mats around Kamala and her friend whose name I can't remember, in addition to anyone and anything that has motion. When you use a 3D camera tracker, anything that's not stationary can mess with the math used to recreate how the camera was moving in 3D space. The scene is then covered in tracking markers, which are then used to figure out the camera's motion. A 360-degree, high dynamic range image of the scene would have also been captured in order to realistically light the environment and their murals. The sweet animations themselves would then be projected onto geometry in the scene, probably planes, and placed where the walls are. Finally, the 3D assets would be composited into the scene with anything, including the animation, painstakingly rotoscoped out by a team of brave individuals. That sounds like a lot. What about a simpler way? Here is the planar tracker. We're going to do a planar track on the wall where we'd like to place our cool animation and then rotoscope anything that includes it. No fuss. All of this is being done with the free version of DaVinci Resolve. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, I don't suspect this is going to be a very long tutorial. As you can probably see by the node tree down here, there isn't a whole lot going on to make this happen. Now, of course, if you decided to be a little bit more adventurous and kind of add multiple murals or more complex elements and things like that, it could end up being, a little bit more complicated, but honestly, this isn't very hard to set up. So let's go ahead and learn how to do it. So first we'll go through all these nodes here. Now, of course, we have our media in coming in. This is funneling into a planar tracker that's using the corner pin operation. You see if I move this here, kind of throws it all out of whack. We don't want to do that though, so we'll undo. And then this footage here, this is the original footage. I have it masked with a rectangle just so that way it's got an alpha on the background, that there's nothing else sticking out. Because as we can see, there's a very thin border between this wall and the outside. I also wasn't crazy about how fast it was originally, so I went ahead and decided to slow it down a bit. I think it was by 0.3, but that's obviously very optional. We also have a motion blur here that may or may not be doing anything. I just wanted a little bit of almost like a fade effect between the different animation frames, but I don't think that's actually doing much. And then to kind of blend it into the scene, it was a little bit more washed out. So you always want to make sure that your elements that you're integrating into your scenes match the tone and hue and all that of the scene that you're putting it in. In this case, it's just a bunch of random paint. So I didn't take a whole lot of time to do that. I think I just, let's see, I turned down the saturation and raised the lift a little. So, you know, minor transformations. And one of the things that always sells effects is you want to kind of zoom in and see, okay, how in focus is this? Because you don't want to have something that you're putting in that's super sharp and super in focus. So I went ahead and blurred the edges a little bit, just to make sure that this looks like it belongs in the scene. All right, and then of course that's, like I said, funneling into a planar tracker where it's being projected into this rectangle here. Now this is where the real fun happens. So up here are all the masks. Oops, I'm actually disconnecting them. There we go. So these masks here, all they do are simple roto shapes that cut out the parts that we don't want this mural to be on. And that's the part I was talking about where they painstakingly went through and rotoed everything. That is that step. I'm not going to bore you with that. I have a video on it that I just made actually, and I'll put it in the little like thingy that pops up here in this area or so. So if you want to learn how I am rotoing in here, I'm actually using the same technique as I talked about in that video where I've attached all these masks to a planar transform node that I got from here. So that way those masks are kind of moving along with the video, so that way you don't have to spend as much time rotoing. It's a little bit faster. And luckily these, for the most part, are all like flat shapes. And they have just a little slight soft edge on it just to make everything blend real nice. And then of course that's being merged. These two things are being merged. This collection of masks here is being used as the mask for this merge node. So that way when they come together, everything's cut out in just the right way. And that's an overview of how we did it. So let's do it. Let's do it again. Let's do it. Just like that. Look at that. We're right back at the beginning. So the first thing that I like to do, of course, is let's look at this footage. And for the most part, the wall remains completely visible. So we don't have to worry too much about where we put our planar track. So let's create and add a planar tracker. And we'll funnel that in. I'm actually going to put that up here this time. And we want to make sure that perspective is turned on because it's slight, but we do have a little bit of a perspective shift in here. And really any frame will do. So I'm going to use, let's see, around frame 67. We're going to set that as the reference frame. And then we're going to make, like I said, make sure perspective is checked. Let's just draw ourselves a square in here where it won't become occluded or go out of frame. And we'll just track. That's looking solid. And we can either go to the reference frame or just hit go, and then we'll track the other direction. So let's see how that's looking. You always want to review the track, make sure it's looking good. You can kind of get in close. There might be a little tiny bit of drift, but I think we're okay. You can always do it again, try different spots. I think in this case we should be good. So now we'll bring in our footage. And actually this time I'm going to use the rejected animation, the one that I decided not to go with. Let's take a look here. That's actually pretty nifty. I didn't like how it kind of, it's a little too jittery. It made it look like I had done something wrong. Now Fusion tends to like it when you work on things all in the same resolution. So I'm just going to grab a quick resize node and make sure that that's the same resolution. as the rest of our video. Cool. Now what we want to do, there's other stuff that we can do to our footage, like color correcting it and all that, but we'll go ahead and connect it to our corner pin image, this green button up here. And while we're at it, we'll go ahead and add our merge node. We're going to plug the output of the planar tracker into the foreground. And now we'll switch from track to our corner pin. Now, of course, that is just not gonna do. So what we can do is grab these sides here, and we want to try to line them up to the perspective of the rest of the video. Now, one of the things that I like to do to make this a little easier is just go to the merge node and turn down the blend. So what I'll do is line it up to very obvious points of perspective. And let's go ahead and scrub through and see how that's looking. Track-wise, it's holding on quite nicely. Cool. And as far as like the core competencies of doing this sort of like planar track and putting on the mural, this is like the 90% of it. So that is tracked to where it needs to be, and the only thing that's left is actually to mask it out properly. Now, just like on those like cooking shows, they're not gonna wait around for the cake to bake. They already have the cake ready to go right here. Where is it? There we go. I've copied the scene masks. Now, since those scene masks were animated based on the previous track that I had done, I'm going to copy my planar track down here. Now, what you'd want to do, of course, and like I said, I mentioned in the other video, but we want to grab our planar tracker, switch over to track for a second, create a planar transform, and then switch it back to corner pin. And that planar transform will transform these masks and make it a lot faster to actually roto these shapes here. So you would want to, of course, and artistic flair and stuff, but I went around anything that wasn't on this plane here, anything that like this ladder, I think it's a ladder, it looks like a ladder for a giant. And then of course down here and the person's face and body and all that. So if I go in here and once I have all my masks, we go ahead and put that in the input of the planar transform and funnel that into the mask of the merge. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. No, it's okay. All we need to do is come in here. Where was it? Where was it? Oh yeah, in the merge node, we just apply mask inverted. And look at that! We'll go ahead and put this blend up. Now that is crazy. Because what we haven't done is the secret sauce is just the overlay blend mode. And drop the opacity a little bit. Now it kind of takes on the texture of the wall. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're looking for animations to use in this, one of the things that really sold those is they're all 2D, and the animations in the show were just very well done. It's obvious that the artists who created those animations were working off of this footage, and they were integrating it beautifully into the environment. But it's the same concept. We're just projecting some sort of animation onto the wall. Now, of course, I feel like it looks it's definitely a little too saturated. It probably won't look right once we color correct it, because all of these colors will get a whole lot more boosted, so as I had done before. And this is kind of to taste. We want to also look at shadows and things and make sure that the shadows on the image that we're putting in match the shadows of the ground. This can't be any darker than these darkest shadows here. And especially if we zoom out and we blur our eyes a little bit, it's looking pretty decent. But as you can see, because of the planar track that we did, I have very few keyframes here. Now that is also helped by the fact that the camera itself doesn't move very much, but doing that planar track first and then rotoscoping definitely saves you a whole bunch of time. So I'll just kind of leave this where it is, and we'll hop over to the color page where, so this is still using the media out from my other one, but it's a very simple grade. There's not a whole lot, oops. It's not very impressive. It only took like 5 minutes to add contrast, give it that kind of like blue look, desaturate the shadows a bit. I also did a power window track on the window there just to bring down, get some more of the detail back in the clouds. That is, I almost feel like I'm missing something, but honestly, that is it. We use the corner pin and adjust it appropriately so it matches the perspective of whatever surface we're trying to put our image on. And honestly, the part that takes the most time is the roto, which is oh so often the case. And of course, I'm not going to make you sit through all the rotoscoping. But luckily, I actually lucked out. I didn't try to pick somebody who's wearing a beanie, but it did. And you know what? That just helps out so much when it comes to rotoscoping. Everybody should always be wearing hats. And life just becomes so much easier. So yeah, like I said, I knew this would be kind of a quick one. I'm pretty sure you guys have gotten the gist of this. So yeah, if there's any details I might have missed that you wished I had gone over, just leave a comment. But it is a very simple process. And of course, on the actual show, it is very likely that they're using a much more intense process using that 3D camera solve rather than a planar tracker, which planar trackers do an excellent job. It might have just been planar tracks. But I don't see Marvel, taking the easy way out. But I could be wrong. They could have actually used just planar tracks, just kind of like how we did it, but a little bit more intense because they have like a million things you need to roto. The only thing that makes me suspicious is at the end of that scene, there's a part where one of the animations on the wall kind of falls off and hits a van, and it really did look like a piece of geometry, some 3D geometry that actually they did like a cloth simulation or something like that on, or just hand animated it because it was pretty simple. So I don't know. That part in particular makes me think it was a 3D camera solve, because if you needed to integrate any actual 3D elements into it, you would have already have that 3D camera solve from the match movers. They would have already have had that. So, I guess we'll have to just wait for the VFX breakdowns of Miss Marvel. But anywho, take this information and go out and impress your friends and get lots of likes and stuff on Instagram. Go conquer the world with your cool VFX. And if there's any other techniques that you'd like me to stumble through, or even see if there's a way to do certain things inside of the free version of Resolve, just let me know. But until next time, be good to each other and take care.